He still got it. If we rank all the technological innovations throughout human history, let's go back, uh, maybe the history of human civilizations 12,000 years ago, and you rank them by the how much of a productivity multiplier they've been. So we can go to electricity or the labor mechanization of the Industrial Revolution, or we can go back to the first agricultural revolution 12,000 years ago. In that long list of inventions, do you think AI, when history is written 1,000 years from now, do you think it has a chance to be the number one productivity multiplier?
It's a great question. Look, many years ago, I think it might have been 2017 or 2018, I said at the time, like, AI is the most profound technology humanity will ever work on. It'll be more profound than fire or electricity. So I have to back myself. I still think that's the case. When you asked this question, I was thinking, well, do we have a recency bias, right? Like in sports, it's very tempting to call the current person you're seeing the greatest
Yes.
player, right? And so is there a recency bias? And you know, I do think from first principles, I would argue AI will be bigger than all of those. I didn't live through those moments. 2 years ago, I had to go through a surgery, and then I processed that there was a point in time people didn't have anesthesia when they went through these procedures. At that moment, I was like, that has got to be the greatest invention
Yeah.
humanity has ever
Yes.
done, right? So, look, we don't know what it is to have lived through those times. But, and many of what you're talking about were kind of this general things which pretty much affected everything,
Mhm.
electricity or internet, etc. But I don't think we've ever dealt with the technology, both which is progressing so fast, becoming so capable. It's not clear what the ceiling is. And the main unique, it's recursively self improving, right? It's capable of that. And so the fact it's the first technology will kind of dramatically accelerate creation itself, like creating things, building new things, can improve and achieve things on its own, right? I think like puts it in a different league, right? And so different league. And so I think the impact it will end up having will far surpass everything we've seen before. Obviously, with that comes a lot of important things to think and wrestle with, but I definitely think that'll end up being the case.
Especially if it gets to the point of where we can achieve superhuman performance on the AI research itself. So it's a technology that may, it's an open question, but it may be able to achieve a level to where the technology itself can create itself better than it could yesterday.
It's like the move 37 of alpha research or whatever it
Yeah.
is, right? Like, and when yeah, you're right. When it can do novel, self-directed research, obviously for a long time we'll have hopefully always humans in the loop and all that stuff. And these are complex questions to talk about. But yes, I think the underlying technology, I've said this, like if you watched seeing AlphaGo start from scratch, be clueless, and like become better through the course of a day, like, really it hits you when you see that happen. Even our like the VO3 models, if you sample the models when they were like 30% done and 60% done and looked at what they were generating, and you kind of see how it all comes together, it's kind of like, I would say, it's kind of inspiring, a little bit unsettling, right? As a human. So all of that is true, I think.
Well, the interesting thing of the Industrial Revolution, electricity, like you mentioned, we can go back to again, the first agricultural revolution. There's what's called the Neolithic package of the first agricultural revolution. It wasn't just that the nomads settled down and started planting food, but all this other kinds of technology was born from that, and it's included in this package. So it wasn't one piece of technology. There's these ripple effects, second and third order effects that happen. Everything from something silly, profound, like pottery that can store liquids and food, to something we kind of take for granted, but social hierarchies, and political hierarchy. So like early government was formed. Because it turns out if humans stop moving and have some surplus food, they start coming up with, they get bored and they start coming up with interesting systems, and then trade emerges, which turns out to be a really profound thing, and like I said, government there I mean, there's just, second and third order effects from that, including that package is incredible and probably extremely difficult if you ask one of the people in the nomadic tribes to predict that, it would be impossible. It's difficult to predict, but all that said, what do you think are some of the early things we might see in the quote unquote AI package?
I mean, most of it probably we don't know today, but like, the one thing which we can tangibly start seeing now is, obviously with the coding progress, you got a sense of it. It's going to be so easy to imagine, like thoughts in your head, translating that into things that exist. That'll be part of the package, right? Like it's going to empower almost all of humanity to kind of express themselves. Maybe in the past you could have expressed with words, but like you could kind of will things into existence, right? Maybe not fully today. We are at the early stages of vibe coding. I've been amazed at what people have put out online with VO3,
Mhm.
but it takes a bit of work, right? You have to stitch together a set of prompts, but all this is going to get better. The thing I always think about, this is the worst it'll ever be, right? Like at any given moment in time.
Yeah, it's interesting you went there as kind of a first thought. So the exponential increase of access to creativity.
Software creation, are you creating a program, a piece of content for to be shared with others, games down the line, all of that like just becomes infinitely more possible.
Well, I think the big thing is that it makes it accessible. It unlocks the cognitive capabilities of the entire 8 billion.
No, I agree. Look, think about 40 years ago, maybe in the US there were 5 people who could do what you were doing,
Mhm.
like go do a interview, and but today think about with YouTube and other products, etc. Like how many more people are doing it? So I think this is what technology does, right? Like when the internet created blogs, you heard from so many more people. So I think, but with AI, I think that number won't be in the few hundreds of thousands. It'll be tens of millions of people, maybe even a billion people, like putting out things into the world in a deeper way.
And I think it'll change the landscape of creativity. And it makes a lot of people nervous. Like, for example, whatever, Fox, MSNBC, CNN are really nervous about this part. Like, you mean this dude in a suit could just do this, and you and YouTube and thousands of others, tens of thousands, millions of other creators can do the same kind of thing. That makes him nervous. And now you get a podcast from Notebook LM that's about 5 to 10 times better than any podcast I've ever done.
Not true, but yeah.
I'm joking at this time, but maybe not, and that changes. You have to evolve because I on the podcasting front, I'm a fan of podcasts much more than I am a fan of being a host or whatever. If there's great podcasts that are both AIs, I'll just stop doing this podcast. I'll listen to that podcast. But you have to evolve and you have to change, and that makes people really nervous, I think. But it's also a really exciting future.
The only thing I may say is I do think like in a world in which there are two AI, I think people value and choose just like in chess. You and I would never watch Stockfish 10 or whatever and AlphaGo play against each. Like it would be boring for us to watch. But Magnus Carlsen and Gukesh, that game would be much more fascinating to watch. So it's tough to say. Like one way to say is you'll have a lot more content, and so you will be listening to AI generated content
Mhm.
because sometimes it's efficient, etc. But the premium experiences you value might be a version of like the human essence wherever it comes through. Going back to what we talked earlier about watching Messi dribble the